I'm always looking for the simplest, most potent thing that kills like so many birds with one stone. If they're seeing that my stance is not right, but also this is wrong and this is wrong, can I find the one kind of concept of thing that hits all those, gets all those birds?
Welcome back, or welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Frampton. Today's guest is Tom Gellie. Tom has a really interesting introduction to his newfound passion for surfing as an adult learner, because Tom is a ski instructor, a very experienced and sought-after ski instructor at that, as well as a bodyworker, a functional movement and biomechanical practitioner. He's also been podcasting for a long time, so he's very well spoken. And I really, really enjoyed this conversation with Tom. We could have gone on and spoken for a lot longer. So I know everyone here will enjoy this one. You can check out a bit more of Tom at bigpictureskiing.com, because Tom also teaches a lot of his skiing stuff online. And of course, Instagram of the same name. There'll be links to everything Tom in the show notes to this episode. And of course, you can check out my website, surfmastery.com. But just before I fade in that interview, I wanted to talk about a new wetsuit I got recently from, I'll hold it up here if you're watching on YouTube. There's a Flat Rock wetsuit. You may have seen people wearing these quite new in the wetsuit game. And gosh, it is hands down the most comfortable wetsuit I have ever worn. It's made from Japanese limestone neoprene, and it feels like a cross between silk and butter, and it fits so good. So stoked with this new wetsuit, and it's slightly more expensive than a Needs Essential wetsuit. So it's not an expensive wetsuit, but gosh, it's a lot warmer and better fitting and more comfortable than a Needs Essential wetsuit. I'll give it that for sure. And I actually wore, this is the 2-3 version I've got. I've had it for a little bit, and then I went to go surfing the other day in the middle of winter here in New Zealand, and my 4-3 O'Neill, which is about twice the price, had a hole in it, in the crutch, so I couldn't wear that. So I grabbed this, thinking, I'll just go for a quick surf. It doesn't matter if I get cold. And so I was really surprised at how warm this 2-3 wetsuit was. The wind did not cut through it like it would my Needs Essential 2-3. So yeah, anyway, awesome wetsuit. And the guys at Flat Rock have been kind enough to give my listeners a discount on a wetsuit. So if you go to flatrock.com.au, and we've got a coupon code at checkout, which is Master15. So that's Master15. Sorry, that's flatrockwetsuits.com.au, flatrockwetsuits.com.au. I will have a link to that website in the show notes though, and as well as I'll write down that coupon code for a 15% discount, which is Master15, Master15. So yeah, it's also another way to support this show. Next time you buy a wetsuit, give it a crack. Great wetsuits. The fitting, I got a medium. I'm a medium in O'Neill, and I am in a medium with my Needs Essential as well. And sizing wise, great wetsuits. They also ship internationally as well, so it doesn't matter whether you're in California or Australia or New Zealand or wherever you're listening from. They ship internationally, and mine turned up pretty quick, and it's a great wetsuit. So yeah, go and check out flatrockwetsuits.com.au. Discount code Master15 for that. And then without further ado, I will fade in my conversation with Tom Gellie of Big Picture Skiing. You started your skiing podcast back in 2015, and that's when I started this podcast.
Yeah, right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Same sort of time. Yeah. What was the incentive behind you doing it? What was the main reason?
So I started surfing. I was a white trash dairy farmer, And then when I left school, I discovered surfing, and the beaches that me and my friend would surf at, there was no one else surfing around. It was all self-taught, just on whatever board the local salesman decided to sell us. Didn't stop us though. We were so passionate about it. And, obviously we picked up a little bit from magazines and that. And then, fast forward 15 years, and I ended up living in Palm Beach and scored a job with Matt Granger at the High Performance Center in just around the corner from you, right? And you said you're in Narrabeen.
Right. Yeah.
And that was my first really introduction into, the surf coaching world. And then obviously being surrounded by really good waves and really good surfers and people that, I get listed their surfing performance quite high up. And it wasn't just what I was learning, as through the journey of becoming a surf coach and getting surf coaching myself. It was the conversations I was having with everyone around. So I kind of thought, podcasting was new back then. I was like, I should share these conversations.
That's right. Not everyone gets the chance. Like, I haven't had that sort of chance like you have to be around people like Matt Granger on probably a daily basis, and then his friends who surf at a really high level. And then all those things, it could be in a car, could be sitting, because there's no surf, you're just sitting there talking. Those are gold. And that's what I realized same in the ski world happens. And it's really neat in this day and age, how we can share that stuff.
Exactly. So big picture skiing, why did you choose that name?
Chose that name because I wanted something that sort of represented that when I think about something, I really try and look at it from all angles. And definitely at that point, when I sort of started it, which was actually just COVID's hit. So my job as a sort of functional body worker type person, I had a pretty successful practice, people coming in, couldn't put hands on people anymore. And I was going through this period of just realizing, like, the way I saw things, like I was like, I know how to fix people with knee pain, because I'd figured out this, one method modality, and it worked. But then it would come to a point where it would stop working and I'd have to like find new ways. And so I just had so many experiences where I realized there's just so many different ways of looking at the same thing. And the more you can do that, the better you are at dealing with people when they come to you with their particular problem. Like the old, don't use a hammer for everything, that saying is. So yeah, I was trying to look for a name that encompassed that. Like, I want to teach you and view the way you approach skiing from the big picture right out here, so I can see it from all angles.
So when did surfing come into the picture?
Not long after that, because we moved from the inner part of Sydney to the northern beaches to North Narrabeen in January 2021. And I'd spent a lot of time, being an Aussie, we spent a lot of time at summer holidays at the beach and body surfing, boogie boarding, that sort of stuff. So I was familiar with waves, but now being near the ocean, it's like this, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to take up surfing. Because actually I was right into kite surfing. And so we were sort of closer to Botany Bay in Sydney. So kite surfing was an easier thing to do. And I loved it. And I thought I'd keep doing that. But then, North Narrabeen, which is a classic break, was just get in the car for 3 minutes and I'm there. So I decided to take it on. And also, and I should say a really important piece, I knew, because big picture skiing was growing, and I just really wanted to find something that I could relate to my students in a learning sense. Because as you probably know, the better you get, you kind of just, there's no point in remembering if what you're trying to do is just get good at something. Once you get good at something, you shouldn't think about it. You should just do it. Thinking can ruin things, but I need to go backwards in my skiing to help people. And like, what am I actually doing here? Surfing really helped me be on the same page in terms of, wow, it takes a lot of time. It takes going through frustration periods. It takes looking for different angles at approaching the same problem you're trying to overcome. So that was a big motivating factor. But then, of course, got the feeling for it, and I just do it because I love it as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I bet you've got some interesting perspectives on your surfing journey. But before we get to that, obviously skiing has been in your world a lot longer. When did you start skiing?
We would take family trips sort of for a week every year since I was, you know, 1 years old. I was in my dad's backpack, ski touring around the Australian Alps, if you can call them that. And so we would do that every year. And but something inside of me always wanted to go to Canada. I can't explain. There wasn't like a book. I didn't read a book or whatever. But after finishing university in Albury, I was like, I'm going to Canada. I'm not getting another job. I'm going to see what it's like over there and get in some really good quality snow. So I went to British Columbia, had no job because the way uni lined up, I had to stick around. So all the jobs have been taken. So I just got a flight, got on the internet, found a job in a rental shop at Silver Star. That's when like the skiing really took off because then I started doing season. So that was 2006. And I did back-to-back winters, so Canada, Australia, Canada or North America somewhere, and Australia. And that was cool because your progress just goes like through the roof when you are teaching it, but also on snow every day. And Canada's great because it's not super busy as an instructor. So I had so much time to just go and ski for myself and learn from others and get better.
Okay. So do you think that journey, like being passionate about skiing, and I've been involved on the coaching side and the technical side as well as just loving it, how did that help you as a surfer?
Massively. Do you know what? I think one of the biggest things I've learned in coaching is back to the big picture sort of name thing again, is a lot of people, like when they watch something like you performing a cutback, they put words to it and describe what it is from their perspective. Okay, so they're looking at you doing something. So then when they describe it from how they're viewing it. But then the experience of that is not at all the way it's kind of described often by the coach or the person. So, look at where the arm is, look at how they drive and compress here and extend here. There can often be, like sometimes that can work for people, but often that's just through a process of just a lot of time and repetition and you get these little gold pieces somewhere where you feel something. So I've just realized that when someone says to me, this is what you need to do, I'll take that, but I'll park it kind of, if there's a sphere around me of like ideas in part of the sphere, and then keep searching off the side of that to what else could he be trying to, or she, if she's coaching me, get me to do. And could I think of it differently? And in my experience of it, would that be different? And maybe I can give an example from the ski world in terms of stance. So athletic stance in skiing, so important, just as is in surfing. Like you get in a really good athletic position and it can make things much better and work a whole lot better. So you classically teach people about this position, like the flex in the ankles, the knee, the angle of the upper body, where the hands are. And while that's one way of teaching it, you can also cue it up in different ways. Like, when you lean over, like when you start adding like turn forces, you're leaning over, like in a surf turn or a ski turn, leaning right over. There's forces added on you. Some of those things force you into the athletic position naturally, as opposed to you faking this stance that everyone, gets you to stand on a Bosu ball or something and stand here. And so, yeah, I'm always looking for like the simplest, most potent thing that kills like so many birds with one stone. If they're seeing that my stance is not right, but also this is wrong and this is wrong, can I find the one kind of concept or thing that gets all those birds? And so searching for those types of things is what I've been doing with my surfing. And I think it's going pretty well. It's hard to improve later in life, but I think I was telling you, I went to the wave pool for the first time yesterday in Sydney and finally got to, like 21 waves in the hour period, which is like, it just never happens in real life. And it was so cool to be able to just practice this same thing over and over again, and then see the video, which is even more cool for me, because like I bought that. I was like, I'm going to buy all the videos, go home, and I'd had my coach from surfing video me over the last few years as well, and I can see the change. And then now I'm looking at, for when I do something kind of more in the direction that I want to go. Okay, cool. What did that turn? What did that wave feel like? Go through a process of going deeper on it.
Interesting. The athletic stance for skiing, is it the same as, obviously the way you hold your skis
standing
and
side
locked into a boot, etc., is different, but maybe from the knees up, is there a lot of similarities in that athletic stance?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I don't know, so much of the time, like early on in looking at my surfing, I'd get really annoyed because I knew all this stuff about athletic stance and what should be there. And for instance, instead of compressing down through the whole stance, I'll do the cheats way, which would be I would just drop my head lower around my back. And so the knees and hips aren't really, like the hip joint is not really going lower. The hips itself aren't going lower, but I feel like I'm getting lower. Like, coach is like, compress. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Compress all this stuff. And I got so annoyed at that for so long when they would say that. Like, I had a guy coach me who was a really upper level coach, and we'd look at the video, and I was obviously not doing things right. I was basically just going across the wave, barely using the top or the bottom at all. And he pointed out, he's like, well, right there's a section where you could have just made a really good, like, turn back to the pocket and then out. And I'm like, I don't even know how do you even do that? So I just got frustrated, like, these things, and like, you got to compress here, and all these new words and vocabulary coming in that I just had no way to relate it to what I already knew. But then luckily found this guy, Tony, was more at my level of coaching, not just used to coaching people who had already gone through a lot of experience. And he likes the snow, and he was always trying to relate it back to skiing. So I had something that I was tangible, felt, sense. Okay, it's not exactly like that, but it's very similar to this, Tom. Yeah. And then also on the positive, would just point out when I was getting things right. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to point out, like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. But if you can show a student, I've definitely learned this from skiing, like, if you give them a task, like, say it is the athletic stance, this time when you get lower, just see if you can do it. Feel your knees actually flex, feel your hips get lower instead of just your head getting lower. And they just do it like 3%. You just grab onto that and you go, see, you did it. And all they're doing out of everything is focusing on that. And they can then go out and do it again and do it 4, 5, 6, 7% better.
It's a lot there. I would describe the athletic stance as a position where you feel balanced and able to move in any direction without moving in the opposite direction first. How would you describe?
Yes.
Is that your
like
similar
that,
description?
Yeah, I really like that. But I would say, this is interesting. I like the big picture thing. Like, that is a really good description, and we always want to, like, be able to boil it down. So maybe we can put it somewhere. The athletic stance description in 2 sentences is this. Whereas I think if you can just, like, that is definitely a really good description of it, but then it can be some other things. And if you could come up with 10 different ways to describe it, then you're going to resonate with more people. Do you know what I mean? Like, if the language you use, like, in your mind, that makes perfect sense, and everything, like you're talking about, without having to make a different, like, go backwards first before moving, like those things, there's a whole lot kind of behind that.
Yeah, it's a technical way of it's a coach's. That's how you would describe it to a coach, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I just realized that cues, when you get something right, or say you were coaching me, Michael, over like a couple of weeks, 4 sessions, we just worked on my stance, and it started getting better. By the end of that, and those hour sessions, discussions, chats over message, that whole time we combine it down to maybe me saying the same thing. And you just have to say to me in that week 3, Tom, let's just work on that athletic stance. Remember, like before you were moving back to go forward again. And I would be able to take that whole amount of time and words and knowledge, compress it like a potent potion is a distillation of like a lot more stuff. Then it's potent. But I think you can only get those cues after going through, hearing it, thinking it over, dreaming about it, sleeping. And I think coaches sometimes forget that because you might then go, boom, had this month with Tom. Look where he was. Look where he is now. So much better. And he understands this. And then I'm just going to say that to James next week, got him for a month, and expect the same result just by saying that, that's where I think we can get caught up. Does that make sense?
Totally. And it highlights a point that if you're a client looking for a coach and working with a coach, it's not going to 3 hours is not going to change anything. It's going to take 10 hours before you even know what you're going to change.
Yep. There can be those moments, I think, as a coach, you probably had it where you get that client who's ready. Maybe they've had a whole bunch of history beforehand and they just needed to hear the right thing from you at that moment. That, of course, happens. And then they'd probably think you're amazing. But it's also the lead up and possibly all those other things, and you've just spun it in the right way. So there's that. But I absolutely agree with the long-term approach. And part of my philosophy with coaching is making sure people have in their minds like an expectation. Do you remember the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels? Seen that one? Guy Ritchie film. Pretty sure it's in that one. There's this quote where the guy goes, he's like, expectations, they're the mother of all F-ups. So if people coming in like expecting within this certain amount of time, they're going to do this, not good. If you just get your expectations lower and long-term and just see what happens, be open-minded to the result being this, A, B, C, not sure, but I'm just going to go through the experience. I find that's a much better way of doing it. Yeah, I prefer coaching people over like a season. So we can then like get the vocabulary, get through some stumbling blocks. There's always prior knowledge that gets in the way. Like that's a huge barrier. I find that if you can discover those, like a preconceived idea that say maybe they heard someone with a lot of status, or even like maybe their favorite pro surfer on a video said, like you got to do this, bear down with your toes with the bottom turn and really whatever. And so they've always done that. And anything that is not saying that, they kind of throw out the window. Those situations can really get people stuck and not make them progress. So yeah, I'm always looking out. I'll give an example of one from the ski world because that's where obviously I've got experience. I was working with this client from Park City, Utah, and he's been skiing all his life. Really good skier, does ski racing, has had coaches from like the US team coach him. He's connected, so he can get anyone he really needs to help him with the skiing. And anyway, we do some online coaching work where he's sending me videos, I'm sending him feedback back. And partway through, I go, why are you not dragging your inside pole? Looks like you're deliberately trying to keep your inside ski pole from touching the snow at all points. And he said, well, I was told by this high-level coach that I should never do that. That's bad technique. And I said, next time you go out, just let it drag. And the reason is you're going to get feeling from, you're not going to lean on it, but you're going to get feeling through that pole to where your body is leaned over in a turn. Just like if you lean, how we like to touch the water when you lean over with a calf. Just helps when you're looking straight ahead to have a feeling of where you are in space. And straight away, next day he tries this pole drag. Wow, so much better. I feel more relaxed in the turn. I feel like I can go further, lean it over further, more comfortable, fixed a whole bunch of things. It's like, I can't believe I'd been doing for years, trying to avoid that because someone told me it was the wrong thing to do.
Yes, that person maybe had a bad experience. His pole got caught and maybe he had a high level of body awareness and he didn't need that pole to be there and it worked for him.
Yep.
Just like the surf you mentioned. Oh, when I do a bottom turn, it feels like my toes are digging in. Well, it might not feel like that for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It might just be whatever it is. You got to be able to like, and I think the joy of like sport and doing things is when you get those feelings, because funnily enough, the other day, it wasn't in the wave pool, it was at North Narrabeen. I had a bottom turn where I felt my toes like really dig into the board, and I'd never felt that before. Like I'd push through the balls of my feet, but never to the point of pushing over and the toes went in, and the board behaved differently. And however many turns and waves I've caught, never felt that. And for some reason that happened then. But bing, I remembered this YouTube video of this guy and my coach sending me, watch this. It's a really good one on the bottom turn. It's a classic old one. And anyway, so now that has clicked really, really. So it's just kind of funny timing but I love finding those epiphany kind of feeling moments. Once you get it, then you can repeat it. You just got to get yourself in the situation or give your student the environment to feel it, and then they're off to the races.
Back to your initial, I'm going to guess, because of your history with skiing and biomechanics and technique, I'm going to guess that you approach surfing with a pretty reasonable athletic stance right from the get-go. So that part of your
I would
surfing,
say so, yeah.
So that part of your surfing, you're sort of ahead of the game in a way. So which aspect, as a beginner surfer, like new to it, maybe just think back to your first year, what was some of the biggest like roadblocks and the biggest plateaus and learning curves?
Yeah, I mean, I think having the wave pool, if that was back in the beginning, that would have helped, because I think the biggest difference between learning to surf and skiing is that skiing, you can just go up a lift, down the same run, and do it over and over and over again. You can even stop and just do part of a turn. Like you just do the top half and then stop, or the bottom half and then stop, or do like all those things, being able to break it down. I was always trying to I was just like, I just wish I could do that in surfing. Like I just want to like just do a bottom turn and then stop and not be like brought on with all the other things going on, and just do it again and do it again and then do it to the right and then the left. That was the most frustrating thing for me, because I knew how important. And when I teach skiing, I break that down for people and I force them into just doing it to find that feeling. And then they can go like link turns and keep searching for it and spend more time doing it. So it was, the amount of repetitions was very frustrating. The surf we have locally here is kind of challenging. Like you got to make, it's not like there's not really point breaks or anything like that. So you take off, get maybe a chance to do one maneuver. So just being able to do a bottom turn and a cutback or something took so many waves for that to happen. Oh yes, actually, you know what? A big thing, because I'd also done a lot of snowboarding, I would bog the rail so much because I'd put too much weight on my front foot. I was just so used to like keeping the weight really even on a snowboard, that I would just try and do the same on a surfboard. So that was a problem. But then it's funny that, we talk about this, and I'm just starting to get to the point now where I'm figuring out that now I've gone too far to the back foot, because I know you've spoken to Clayton, and he's, and early on I found him, and he was really helpful, by the way, and how he talks about like people just don't stand on the front foot enough. And now I finally get that. But I needed to go through like what a lot of other people went through, which is back foot, and realizing how you can really turn the board very sharp off the back foot and all this stuff. I just went straight into, with probably hardly much speed, just trying to rail this thing from snowboarding. So I made this. Now I need to start coming back into that. And because I look at videos of really good surfers and their bottom turn, how much more the front of the board is in the water when it's on rail versus mine. And I can see I'm losing speed to come back up the wave. Yeah. Also, so that was frustrating, bogging rail so much.
On that note, like the front foot, it's also so dependent on where your front foot is as well, because there's a massive...
Tell me about that.
So if
Because
you
here we go. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get some help.
so every surfboard has like a center point or a balance point or a pivot point, right? Usually the widest point of the surfboard. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if your foot is at 45 degrees directly in the center of that pivot point, then front foot is not a good enough. It could be the heel of the front foot, right?
That's behind. You're still behind
So
the
you're
center point.
still behind the center point. But then
Got it.
and then if you really want to drive more of that front of the rail of the board in the water, you're going to have to put a lot more weight on the toe, on the forefoot of the front foot. So that heel toe, because so you could even have 80-90% of your weight on the front foot, but still have complete control over the rocker of the board. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But if that foot's 2 inches forward, you're going to have to go all the way to your back foot, and then all of a sudden you're moving more, and vice versa.
Yes. Rather than the fore and aft being controlled completely in the front foot.
Yeah,
See, that makes sense.
And if your stance isn't wide enough, then you're going to put all of your weight on the front and find it frustrating because nothing happens because your foot's actually just needs to be forward an inch more.
Okay.
That's just something that is obviously avoided with skiing and snowboarding because you're locked into your bind. You set that up. You set your bindings up.
That's right.
Before you even get on the board.
Yeah, you can't change that. But your foot is where it is, and you learn to use the front of the foot and the back of the foot, but you can't move that entire foot, as you said. So then I'm just now thinking like, okay, I really want to go out now. Like you've said that, I want to go out now and play with this, be more mindful of where I place my front foot, other than just like intuitively, I've been probably moving around at different points, but deliberate with it. So what I'd be looking for then is like some guidance, say from you on, okay, well, like maybe even mark, like, would you mark it with a texter? Yeah. Okay.
Find the wide point of your board yep. And probably the best way to do it is if you surf a wave, you're like, oh man, that board something clicked on that wave. Before you pull off, look down at your foot and then put your thumb in front of your toe and just scrape a big mark in the wax and go, bam, that's where my front foot needs to be. Because that's the most accurate. Now, obviously, measuring the board and putting a line through the wax of where that midpoint is, okay, that's a good way to start. Oh, should it be? Is it right? Because maybe it's not literally the widest part of the board. It depends on there's the rocker and the contour. Every board's different, so it might not literally be the widest part of the board where the pivot point is, but it's going to be very close to there. So that's a good guideline to start thinking of, right?
That's gold. What you said there, because I could like picture like taking off, having a good couple of turns, and then actually like not being taken out by the lip or something and being able to ride out. Now my cue is going to be, if that felt good, I'm going to look and try and figure out where my foot was. And same goes, if I have a bad one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go, so then I can compare and go, right, okay, what Mike was talking about, I can really see that because my foot was in a totally different position. Love it.
Yeah, there's so much, like you said, there's so many more variables in surfing.
So many more.
Yeah, I mean, the mountain obviously changes day to day with the snow and stuff, but nowhere in as much as every individual wave and ocean conditions. Every time you pop up, your feet might be in a slightly different place, especially if you're not surfing that much.
Yeah.
And
the other thing I must say that I was thinking about, you'd probably ask these questions, and skiing versus surfing experience with other people around, and probably where I'm located in the world, North Narrabeen, is maybe not a great starting point for feeling like people are your friends at that break. Luckily, I've gotten to know a lot more in the community, but I'm still very much aware of this. But even so, even elsewhere, that was one thing I wish would be different, because if you go skiing, it just feels a lot friendlier to, like, I could be, a beginner person. I'm not going to look down at them if they just talk to me. I'll go, wow, that was really cool. And what are you doing there? Or another good skier that I've never met before. And in surfing, it just seems people, even on like a really nice morning, there's two people out, like I'm out there and there's another guy out there. It just feels very much like people don't talk to you.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. There's probably a whole bunch of reasons, like this is my time to get away from the family and work, and I don't want to talk to people. Other things like this is my wave, all that sort of stuff going on. But I find that really, that frustrates me actually. And yeah, it was awesome at the wave pool actually, because went there with a friend, but then there were 6 other strangers I'd never met. And as it gets going, everyone's more supportive and cheering for each other, different levels we're all at. And probably just because there's another wave coming, there's a respectful line. Even if you're better than me, you're not going to drop in on me because you don't need to. And that part, I just wish there was more of that, because yeah, I'd love to go out in the morning to just the feel of being out at surf, to be more friendly in general. Do you find that?
Oh, totally. The surf culture is unique in that way. I think it is partly simply because each wave is such a limited resource. So obviously the wave pool takes that out of the equation. But it's also, in the last 10 years, there's been an influx of surfers. So the old salty dogs that are out there and, it should have been like this back in the day, that sort of vibe is out there a lot. For some people, it's, I don't want to talk to you because I just want to zone into the ocean and who's this guy, like, sort of thing. And all of those things. But you've heard the advice, it's just hours in the water. If you want to get better at surfing, you've got to spend time in the water. Part of that, actually probably the biggest reason why that's true, is that's because you get recognized. Everyone gets to know who you are. Then they
don't drop in on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Simple as that, really. They recognize your face, because you probably find it every time I go out, these 3 dudes are always out there and they always get the waves. Well, that's not a coincidence, because they've always been out there for hours every day for 20 years. And that's why they get them. Not only do they read that beach really well, everyone knows who they are and everyone respects the amount of time they've put in the water. And so that's a big part of it. I think the wave pools, they're the driving range for surfing, and it's going to change the game, especially for coaches and stuff. Because I listened to one of your podcast episodes when someone else was interviewing you. And the one big thing it highlighted for me is that surf coaching is nowhere near as technical as other sports. Like the technical, you guys were talking about such detailed technicalities that it's like, man, because surfing's such a limited resource, we just don't have the luxury of thinking about our inside edge at the apex of a bottom turn 20 times in a row, like you might do at half a day skiing.
Yes, I totally agree. Now, so again, perspective on that, I've taken some really positive things from the surf coaching world into my skiing in terms of keeping things simple and not overcomplicating things. And I'll tell you maybe a story here. I interviewed this guy, Sasha Rierick, and Sasha is the former US ski team coach. And he was sort of around where there's this girl, Michaela Schifrin, and Ted Ligety, so world champions, really great skiers. And he was a really interesting person to interview. And one of the things in this conversation that I took away was his focus now on constraints-based learning. And so the idea with constraints-based learning is you try and find you don't give people the answer. So you don't tell me, Tom, you need to keep your back straighter. You create an environment or a situation where I'm forced into doing that through this experience. I'm going to do that because of how you've set it up for me. You've guided me. You've put me in this position to experience it. And so it's far more powerful because I will discover it and do it as a result of something else. It's there because it's necessary and needed. And I've really taken this sort of tack now in my coaching and looked right into this deeper and really believe it's the way you want to do things. And I think a lot of that is going on in surfing because you can't get too involved. With this I can ski with you next to me, Michael. Stop. We can have a conversation on lift. But if you're coaching me, usually you're on the beach and I'm out in the water. for 20 minutes. And then you come in so you can kind of get in my ear and you very much want to do that as a coach. You want to tell people the answers, like just do the. While there's certain parts of that's helpful, really the coach should be there again as the guide to go, what do I need to change in this experience or the cue to just make them feel it? And that's what I should do. Don't give him the answer. This is like, I've got a 6-year-old son, same thing. He's probably ready to tie his shoes. And I just I got to let him do it, show him, let him figure it out. And same with maths. Like I got homework. I just want to go get dinner done and go to bed. I'll just help you and give you, more of the answers instead of letting the person struggle. It's just how we learn. We need to go through that. And so positives in the surf world, I've taken a lot of seeing that in action, and they don't get into such detail, yet these people are still achieving mastery and amazing stuff and great performance. Yeah. So that's a cool takeaway I've had, whereas you're probably seeing it from the other end because you're seeing a lot of generalizations, and then you're seeing, wow, they're talking about angles of 0.5 degrees inside the boot and how that makes a difference. And
yeah, it's a good perspective. So I'm just trying to think of an example. Let's say someone's surfing with just pin straight. So instead of telling them to compress a little bit, you might say, pretend to surf in a room that's slightly shorter than you are, or something like that. Is it an example?
Yeah, that would be an example. Because I want them to feel it, not just have a mental image.
The poo stance is such a common, which we sort of touched on before, where people just dip their head forward and feel like they're actually compressed. How would you constraint-based?
How would you put it? Yeah, how would you put a constraint on that? So the first thing, you've got different things you can change. So if you can, always try and look for the environment. So obviously tricky with surfing waves again, because it's different every day and the tides and all that sort of stuff. But if you can change where they are surfing, so maybe the poo stance is because of, the wave is too steep or something like that, and they can't relax, or the board they're on is forcing it. So the equipment factors, if you can find those things that then let them discover it more themselves, that would be great. The other thing that I'm thinking of, because the obvious would be just stand up straight as a board, the other thing would be take what you're doing wrong and make it even more wrong, because these people don't realize it's a wrong thing. They're in their poo stance surfing, and currently they're doing that because it feels comfortable right there. They feel safe. They feel good. So then tell them to do even more of a poo stance, and they'll feel something hopefully different and go, oh, it's more in that direction, pushing my hips, whatever it is. I thought I was getting lower, but it's back to, again, me and my head being low instead of my hips getting lower and my back staying straighter. That was a really cool thing that I've had a lot of success with, is take the thing that's wrong. Don't try and fix it. Make it even more wrong. Have you ever done that with someone? Because most of the time we wouldn't. Hey, you've got this poo stance. Don't do it. Whereas if you say, I want you to do it even more. I want you to have the most ridiculous poo stance. And then they'll probably come up and they go, wow, yeah, that felt odd and weird. Then they can go, you've got an end of the spectrum now. And you just now just go, you can't go any more that way, any more wrong. Go the other direction.
Yeah, no,
and that's a concept in constraints-based learning. It's one of the ones they've shown is really, it's really useful.
Like when you let your kid eat as much chocolate cake as they want, and then they make themselves sick.
Exactly.
And then they realize, it's actually not good. It's not good for me. I'm only going to have one piece next time.
Yeah. That is a concept, I think, finding the end ranges, the spectrum of something. It doesn't have to be movement. Could be anything. Like you said, food, feeling hungry versus totally full. Until you know where those ends are and you really, that's where you learn, a lesson is the end ranges. So back to when I was doing a lot, my main job was working with people with pain problems, chronic pain. They'd been to see everyone else in Sydney. No one had an answer for them. A lot of the time things were, people they got stuck in one part of this spectrum of movement. So their back could only move one way, or their knee could only move one way because of an old injury that caused them to stay there, or something that was scary. And it was just about getting them, sometimes they couldn't go the opposite direction. So if you go further into the wrong one, almost like pulling a tight rubber band even more, it pulls and then snaps them back out into the direction they actually need to go into.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
Gives you more options as a coach, right? Because if you're like, this is not working, stand up straight back, like straighter in your back, front foot, more weight, that sort of stuff. It's not working. Do the opposite. I told this story the other day on, did a webinar for all the Threadbow ski instructors to kick off the season. And I told them about this moment. And this, so back in 2014, I just made the Australian demonstration team. And that's like the top instructors in Australia, and every country around the world has this kind of selected group to represent the country and show what our technique is about. So here I am, and I'm in Canada, and I think I'm pretty hot stuff because I've made this team and I know everything there is to know about skiing. And, people must be looking at me on the lift as I ski down. And, this one particular morning was doing this run where the chairlift runs over the top of it so people can like watch you. And I was like, yeah, sweet. I'm crushing this. And I stop and I turn around, I look up the slope, and there's this guy coming down who is just way better than me. He's quicker, he's more refined, he's definitely got way more skills than me. And I go, whoa, I need to find out who this guy is. So he comes down and I go over to him and I say, hey, that was really impressive skiing. Like, who are you? Like, what are you doing here? And he goes, hello, my name is Fritz. And Fritz is this Austrian ski instructor. I go, I'd love to have some time to like ski with you. If you make that happen, I'd be really grateful. It's like, yeah, sure. I have to work now, but let's catch up, in a couple of days time and go for a ski. So a couple of days time, we go skiing and we have a fantastic time. And I'm just in awe of this guy because we're skiing these really challenging runs, and he's on like GS skis, which is longer, thinner skis, stiff race skis, and be the equivalent of like, a surfer just being able to surf really mushy waves on a high performance board that shouldn't be able to generate speed and do all this sort of stuff. We'd all be sinking and not able to do anything. So he's doing these impressive turns, but particularly this short turn, really fast, that I was always never as good at my short turns. I wanted to get better at them. And so I at the end of this sort of time with him, I say, Fritz, how did you get so good at your short turns? And he sort of mentions this guy in the ski world, this guy, Richie Berger, who's like a legend, one of the best ski instructors, skiers you'll ever see, versatile everywhere. It's like, I did some training with him. Okay, cool. Anything you did in particular that really made it, like really helped your short turns? He said, and I said, and what about for me? Like particularly anything you see with me? He goes, Tom, you need to rotate your upper body. And in the ski world, doing that, what I'd learned was don't do it. Like that's a wrong thing. You should not do that. So suddenly I'm there confronted with some advice that is completely against everything that I believed in and has got me to where I'm at. My association would say, this is a wrong thing to do. Don't do it. And he said, I got to go now, Tom. I'll catch you later. So I'm left there in the middle of this run going, well, geez, okay. Here's some advice. It totally seems wrong. I've got two options. I can try it or I can just keep doing what I'm doing. So luckily I try it for a few runs and it feels different. Feeling some new things I'd not felt before, but I wasn't sure if it was the right thing because I couldn't see myself. And I'm like, oh, this is going to look wrong. And when I go back to Australia, they're going to say, you can't ski like that. That's not our technique. So I'm conflicted in my mind about this. So I go get my wife and I say, Jenny, can you just video me? I need to see if this is really kooky and weird or if it's good. So she goes, fine, whatever. She's always sick of videoing me. So I ski down, video, doing these short turns, rotating, doing the wrong thing. And then I go, give me the camera. I go look at it, and I look at it, and I play it back. And it does not look like I'm rotating. It doesn't look like I'm doing an error. A bit like the poo stance thing. Imagine saying like, Tom, you need to do a more poo stance in your surf stance. I think, what? That's the wrong thing though. And so I'm doing this rotation thing and it's looking better and nothing's looking wrong. And so it confirms that what Fritz tells me is something I need to go work on. So then I spent the rest of that season implementing that playing with it, and it changed my world completely, because this thing that everyone says is wrong was suddenly right. And I understood more about like context, and sometimes it's like the timing of something can make something good or bad. There was that in there, and it was like my skill level at the time needed this opposing idea, but it was transformative to realize and be way more open-minded to these things that you perceive are wrong. And yeah, so I'm kind of like interested. I wonder what would happen if I went out even tomorrow and did more poo stance in my, no, it's like I wonder what happened to you if you do it, like, because it's very hard when you're good at something to also like make an error to like pretend to surf like the person is, because there's always a reason they're doing it. Back to again, like they're doing that because they feel safe. How can you put them in an environment, a situation that gets them to feel something new and discover it on their own?
I think that's, I'm wondering what it's like for skiing, but when it comes to changing someone's stance in surfing, it's quite important to make that stance stronger and more self-aware outside of surfing. So on dry land training, for example.
Totally. Like the surf skating, that's definitely helped me. I went to a pump track once, and after seeing one of Clayton's videos and him demonstrate, that was really helpful too. When instead of just talking about it, he took someone who wasn't front foot enough on his simulated wave thing for the surf skate, and he fixed him. And I went, okay, cool. I don't have that bowl, but I can go to a pump track. Went to a pump track, tried it on the surf skate, got a new feeling to simulate a dry land. Oh, that's where I need to be, back to the front foot kind of position, and like still flexed in my joints, but more upright in my upper body, not hunched over. Yeah, those simulation things that are unreal, aren't they?
Oh yeah. And even before you get into skating, like if you're trying to coach someone to be more on the front foot with a better stance, their body just might not have much self-awareness or strength in that position, full stop. So no amount of coaching is going to allow them to get there unless they can stand in front of a mirror and do it first.
Yeah.
Is that like something with skiing, you find that as well?
Oh, massively. And I'll take this from, there's this guy, Thomas Myers. He's sort of big in the bodywork world, talks about fascia, like connectivity of the whole body. And he talks about, anatomy trains. Yeah. He talks about KQ. So we've got IQ, intelligence sort of rating. Well, KQ is like kinesthetic intelligence. So your body intelligence. So many people, like the people who pick up sports fast, like your friend, and he like tries surfing and just picks it up straight away, he's probably got a very high level of KQ. Whereas, the one who doesn't, grew up playing video games, didn't move a lot, just for whatever reason, you can build that. You can improve your kinesthetic intelligence, which is what you're talking about. Doing exercises, going to the gym, doing movements in front of a camera, in front of a mirror to realize like I'm doing this, but it's not what I want to look like. Oh, I need to feel this muscle stretch instead of that one. That's huge. And that's a big part of actually big picture skiing. I have a lot of videos on movement, and I actually think that body awareness trumps strength massively. Like take kids, for example. There's kids who can, 7, 8 years old, make turns better than a lot of adults, and they're not very strong. They haven't gone to the gym, done nothing like that, but they've spent a bunch of time feeling into their body. And when you're younger, if you're moving a lot, you tend to have a high level of kinesthetic intelligence. And so I think a lot of people go down the wrong road of like building strength instead of building body awareness first. Yeah, surfing's such a good example of that. Like some of the best surfers I've seen look like skinny, like scarecrow people. Like, so, there's not much, but then they can pull these amazing turns through just positioning their body in the right way and timing things at the right time. So that part, absolutely, the way I see it is just body awareness. People need to work on it, and it's very easy to do. You just got to start doing it. And
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. In any major advancements I've made, is in body awareness, and strength and body awareness is so interwoven anyway. Like some
Totally, yes.
people would argue that there isn't a difference, especially when you look at someone who's like, what's that guy? Have you seen the guy Anatoly doing with a gym? Like he goes into a gym and he just out deadlifts everyone, and he's dressed as a janitor. You know, he's just.
I've not seen that, but I can imagine what that would. Yeah, surprising everybody.
Yes, yeah, just has great body weight to strength ratio. Because big can mean strong, but you don't have to be big to be strong. Bodybuilders are big because they're training to be big, not training to be strong. You look at a gymnast who's not, they're very muscular, but they're not big. They have great posture, they have great body awareness. And that's why they're strong, not because they're huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what I mean. Like if you get the body awareness right, and then you start using your body, just surfing more, and you can then tip the board over more, and you can do these different moves which require you to flex and bend, but with good awareness, then like as soon as the joints bend and move, like you're stimulating muscles, they're going to have to grow stronger to deal with the situations you're putting them in. Same with gymnastics. It's not a lot of the hanging off of bars, flipping, jumping off things that requires, they don't need external weights with things. Whereas I just see it like when people just generally do squats, that like, and then, if they don't have stuff that are right in terms of body awareness, using their joints really well, then they can fix problems by being stronger, using strength to get out of certain situations instead of finesse and awareness. That's probably like why I'm saying, that's why I think that trumps it. And then all you just need to do is go find an activity which forces you to do more and more of it. Well, then you can add weights on top of it. Go for it, but get the foundation right, like a good house. Don't fix a falling down house by slamming more hard bits of wood all around it and drilling more screws in and everything. Like fix it all, make it neat and working, and then you can be more efficient in the structure.
It seems like good technique closely related to just good gait.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've learned a ton from Gait, actually. There's this guy, and people should look up this book. It's called What the Foot. One of the best books about if you want to learn about your own body and the gait cycle and how that's connected. It's written by a guy named Gary Ward. And I read this book after hearing Gary speak on this podcast about the foot and everything, because I was right into the foot and skiing, wanted to find experts who knew more. So read this book and then found every single video I could find on the internet at the time that this guy had produced, or someone had interviewed him, and just soaked up every bit of information, because he was in the UK. I'm in the Australian side of the world. So I didn't have access to him, and learned so much stuff and started piecing together, like walking is the most natural thing like we do. And what Gary talks about is that basically he breaks down, most people break it down to the gait cycle into 6 different phases. So, heel strike, transition phase, shift phase, propulsion phase, swing phase, but 5, sorry, get that wrong. And at each of these phases and through all this phase, so when you put your left foot down and then the right, and by the time the left foot comes down again, you go through every single possible joint range of motion movement in all planes available in that joint, in between the left foot going down and then the left foot coming down again. And so he's mapped, this is the most incredible thing about it, actually, he's mapped every single joint in the body, from the big toe to the talus, hip, the spine, scapula, wrists, everything, the neck, and how at heel strike on the left foot, your
chain reaction
ankle, your ankle should be dorsiflexing and inverting. The big toe should be extending. The knee joint should be internally rotating and extending. The hip joint should be flexing and externally rotating. And so you've given this map, and through the courses he does, you go through getting this into your brain. And so I've lost a bit of it now, but I used to have this map so I could watch someone come in. They'd come into my studio to get treated for their knees or something. I'd watch them and I'd film them and I'd put together and I'd go, right, left heel strike. The knee is doing not the right thing it should at this moment in terms of his perfect model of gait. So there's your entrance into fixing that person's like possible, or it's an entrance point. And maybe it's like they've come with knee pain, but you watch that the neck is shifting or rotating the wrong way when it should be going, the other way. And so you stop talking about that knee and you go, what happened to your head? You go, oh, nothing. 20 years ago, like fell off a cliff and nearly died, but it's fine now. Like, I don't have problems. And you go, yes, you do. Because your head like doesn't get over your left foot when it should. It needs to. And this could be why your knee is stuffed, because you're just protecting your head or whatever it is. Anyway, yeah, the Gait cycle is amazing. At like that helped me understand how everything's connected, and then look for patterns of up and down the chain to try and figure something out.
Sounds very similar to Gary Gray's work.
Yeah, similar. That's funny, they're both Gary's, but I would also say very, very different. Like really, like you should get the book, What the Foot. It'll, let me know. It's that in terms of like transformative things and people that have influenced and helped my life. That is one. I would, when I'm, at the end of my life, thanking people, he'll be one of them for changing my life.
Yeah, I'd definitely check him out for sure.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's just coming up to the hour. We could just keep talking. That went fast. I gotta go pick my kids up. So, but we could do another one at some point though. And thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for bringing me on. I know I'm not a pro surfer or surf coach, but hopefully some different perspective helped, just like surfing has helped my skiing. It's only helped my coaching, my skiing as well. Like massively looking for different ideas on how to approach the same thing.
Yeah, we needed more than an hour. People know, what's your website?
bigpictureskiing.com. So if you just search Big Picture Skiing, there's a podcast, there's a YouTube channel, the Instagram as well, the same things. Check me out there first. A lot of people go through the social media route to find out who I am. And then if you're really interested, all the deep dive videos on skiing are on the Big Picture Skiing app and website.
Okay, awesome. Tom, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for the time.
All right, dude. Thanks for that. Thank you for tuning into the Surf Mastery podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Also, the best way that you can help support and grow the show is to subscribe, rate and review on whatever app you're using, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course we are now on YouTube, so you can watch the video version of this podcast on YouTube. Be sure to check that out. Also, go to surfmastery.com for more surfing tips via the blog. You can also book in a personal online surf coaching session with me, also at surfmastery.com. There are 2 free downloadable PDFs, one with the 5 best tips from this show and one the 5 best exercises to improve your surfing. So go to surfmastery.com. On the homepage there, you'll see them. Until next time, keep surfing.